This summer, members of the Green Party of England and Wales will be voting to elect a new executive, commonly known as GPEx. Bright Green is interviewing as many of the candidates as are willing to be interviewed, and today I'm joined by one of the candidates for the chair role. But before I introduce them, I just want to say one thing, which is that right now you should scroll down and hit that subscribe button. By hitting subscribe, it means that you'll get all of the videos that Bright Green is putting out, including the rest of the interviews in this year's GPAC selection, in your notification, in your subscription feed, and it helps Bright Green out massively too. So hit that subscribe button and you won't miss out in the future. So without further ado, I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Adrian Spurrell. Adrian, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you very much. A bit hot, same as everybody else at the moment, but hey, global warming is what it is.
Indeed, and I am very much not enjoying this particular extreme weather event that we're experiencing and not looking forward to the more we have to come if we continue to have inaction on the climate. So I'll put a relatively straightforward question to you first, which is, why do you think that you'd make a good chair of GPEx?
Okay, I think the important thing about the chair of GPEx role is about bringing the party with you and being politically impartial. So GPEx is about, to my mind, is a body that is meant to deliver the political strategy. It's meant to deliver the will of members as voted at conference, and to try and do that efficiently and effectively in pursuit of getting our 5/900 target, so 5 MPs, 900 councillors by the end of 2025, and that increasing substantially by 2030. I think I've shown over 5 years working in GPRC, I continually focus on what's best for the party. I look at what is going to take us in that direction. I don't take sides. I continually focus on the best that we can achieve for the party. That's where the political strategy came from. We consulted with, hundreds of members. We consulted with the regions. We consulted with the liberation groups. And we came out with a political strategy that went through conference and people said, yeah, let's go for it. And I think that's what I bring to the role. I bring a desire to listen to people, a desire for transparency, and a desire to get things done in pursuit of the political strategy. And I think I've shown that I can deliver on that.
So you mentioned a few things there, and some of them are, kind of ideas around what the kind of core priorities are for GPEx over the coming years. Yep. So this role, if you were elected to it, you'd be in post for a 2-year period. So what do you think are the biggest priorities for GPEx over those next 2 years? Okay,
so in my statement, I've set out 3 main areas, and I still think those are really fundamentally where we're at. The first is, and in no order of ranking between these 3 things, but I think it's the 3 things we need to focus on. One is about funding. There is no doubt that the UK political system is biased in favour of those with money. We are short of money. It constrains a lot of what we do. And while we have amazing and fabulous volunteers who do a huge amount for the party, frankly, having more money would be really helpful. So trying to work out what a long-term sustainable funding strategy looks like and actually sticking with it is one part of it. Secondly, I think it's really important that we claim some political heartland in terms of policy. When you look at the feedback from focus groups, continually everybody says, yeah, Green Party environmentalism, yep, we get you. And you say, well, what else? And they go, duh, and there's a big silence. And we have to start filling that silence, and we have to start getting a reputation for ourselves about all the other amazing policies and all the other amazing things that we stand for, and getting people to go, oh yeah, housing, yeah, the Greens are really good on that, in terms of available social housing, about changing some of the planning legislation, about making houses less leaky in terms of thermal, heat loss and all the rest of it. Yeah, I really trust them on that. And we don't have enough of those signature policies other than environmentalism. We're seen as a one-trick pony, and we need to be more than that if we're going to get elected. So that's the second thing, looking at that policy infrastructure and the narrative that we can drive out of it. That's actually going to be, I think there's a really tricky task there. We are not a populist party by any stretch of the imagination. We have things that we fundamentally believe in. We have things that are linked to the climate crisis that have to happen. We need to drive social justice, and we need to reclaim democracy in this country. so we've got the things that we stand for, and we have to choose from the things we stand for the things that are going to resonate with people. It's not about sacrificing our principles to get votes. It's about choosing the principles that are going to resonate in this moment best with people, and really driving our reputation and getting people to understand what's amazing about green politics. So I think that's the second part. What's our policy framework and infrastructure look like? And the third part is about just doing things smarter. People put in a lot of time and energy, but sometimes it's just really hard work, and we make things harder for ourselves than they need to be. And it's about how can we modernize the party, that is to allow real voice from the members and speed from the party at the same time. And that's doable, but that's a very, that's an evolution for the constitution, for the IT systems, and we need to fix that, the machinery, if you like, that's going to enable us to really drive forward. So I think those are the three big buckets, but they are big buckets, and I think we're going to have to be quite brave and courageous in terms of actually just saying this is the one that's going to give us the most leverage, the most change at this moment. So that's what we're going to focus on. And that discipline is going to be really, really hard, because our to-do list is like 6 miles long, and we need to cut it down to the 3 or 4 absolutely fundamental things we're going to do over each 6-month period that are really going to give us the breakthroughs that we need, going to get us the membership, going to get us the efficiencies, going to get us the money, and ultimately is going to get us the votes, the MPs and the councillors that we're looking for.
So obviously you've talked in your responses about the kind of electoral direction of the party, and the kind of the ambitions there around the number of councillors we win, and also number of parliamentary seats. And you've also talked about, I think, what sounds like some relatively long-term kind of action in terms of the party's organisation and strategy and so on. But at the moment we have the government just collapsed about a week ago at the time of recording. There's a Tory leadership election going on at the moment. We don't yet know whether there's going to be an election called in October, or whether we're going to be waiting the full 2 years until 2024 for that election. So I guess, how would you as chair steer the party into a position where it's general election ready?
Okay, so we've already started that process. GPRC called a meeting about a week and a half ago, or rather at the urgings of GPRC, I called the meeting, and we got people together to look at actually how are we doing against the political strategy at the moment. So we're very clear that in the next general election, we have to have breakthrough in more than one MP. We have to get beyond that, because I think that's a big psychological step for people, both in and out the party. If people can see more than one Green MP, they'll start to think, oh, hang on, maybe these Greens can do something. So I think that's really, really crucial. So that work has already started. So Kai did some brilliant work as elections coordinator when he was in role. And we've got some early plans in terms of development seats. We have some of those have elected there and chosen their candidates. But at this stage, we actually have some of those development seats that still haven't chosen their candidates. So there's some real crashing priorities that come out of there. One is about getting those target seats with people elected, those campaigns up and running, the funding in there to make it actually really, really work. Back to the policy area, we have to come out with a clarity of policy that's going to create a national recognition for Greens, but also has really super sharp spikiness in each of those constituencies, so that when our candidates go out and talk in the constituencies, people are going to say, oh yeah, you're talking what's important to me, and I'm going to vote for you. And work started already on that, and we have to drive that one through. Fundamental to that as well is getting the manifesto written, and that in a robust and signed off state. And again, I've been agitating for that work to speed up. There's been some early conversations already, and that needs to get driven through. So in terms of the MPs, and it is really about getting people to understand we have to be ready now. We have to really start driving that pace, start driving that agenda, and specifically on the target seats and the group that we have, really, really ramping up their activity now. They haven't got 2 years. Run into an election is 2 years. They have to be starting now. And if they're not fundraising now, they haven't got their people in place. We need to have some conversations with the people in those areas and say, look, are you serious or not? Because you're losing ground. And the longer you leave it, the less likelihood you are to win. And therefore the the harder it makes to justify funding or giving our scarce resource to help you be successful, because we're starting behind. So it's really about getting those target constituencies in place and ready to go. Then it's about getting the rest of the party active and mobilized as well. So it's no small task, but has to start with those target constituencies. We've been through the process, we've chosen the targets, we have to get them really, really game ready. Some are, and some are a bit behind, and there's some, as I said, that haven't chosen their candidates yet, and that has to get sorted.
And so some people watching may not be aware of a lot of what GPEx does actually. And I think if you were to kind of speak to a average member, if such a thing exists, but imagine somebody who occasionally will attend meetings of their local party. They will deliver a few leaflets in the run up to election time. They pay their subs. They might chuck in a tenner when there's a fundraiser going out, but they're not incredibly active within the party, and certainly not at a national level. I think for that type of member, GPAC as a body and the work that it does is incredibly distant. I think if you were to speak to them, they would have firstly no clue as to who even is on GPEx, let alone the work that it does, even though it's pretty integral to the functioning of the party. So if you were elected as chair, how would you strengthen the relationship between GPEx as the executive and the membership at large?
Yeah, that's a really good question. First off, I just want to say we don't have average members. I think anybody who joins the Green Party is not an average person. We're people who care. We're people who put in effort in a very unloved and unrespected way by a lot of the electorate for something that is actually vital to their continued existence. So let's just recognize how amazing our members are, however active they are. So I think it's a really important starting point. I think there's a couple of things that you can do to really start making that linkage. The first is an idea that's come out of the constitutional working group, so the party structure working group that we're running in GPR in the regional council at the moment. And what that is about, at the moment, the regional council and the executive are meant to report to conference about what they've done in the previous year. That's not always been brilliantly done. But what they don't do is say what they're going to try and do in the next 12 months. So I think there's just a simple change by actually starting to say to people, this is our agenda and this is what we're going to set out and do in the next 12 months. And for that to be visible and put to conference so people can see it, they can challenge it, they can question it. And we start having that dialogue about this is what we're going to try and do. And we allow people to give feedback and pushback on that. Another idea that's come out of the structure working group is maybe monthly dial-ins. I don't know if that would be feasible or wanted, but there has to be something that allows ordinary members to connect with the GPEx. And having a monthly 1 hour dial-in or whatever just seems like it's a really easy way of doing that. The technology's there, so many more people are comfortable with online conversations, and it just gives people a chance to talk. And I think the third way to really drive it through is to get the connection between GPEx and the regions and the local parties really, really working. And that means we have to work much more closely with the regional council. We have to get the regional councillors much more closely working with the regions that they represent, so that we actually do have a genuine up and down dialogue going through the party. And again, a simple example of that is we've started the conversation with central office about if we are going to hit 900 councillors by 2025, where do we find them? Okay, so if we look at current tracks and the availability and our average standing rate and all the rest of it, we're not going to get to 900 by 2025, sorry. So what do we need to do extra that's going to bump it up between where we think we're going to get to and where that gap is? And which regions do those come from? So the regions at the moment don't know what they have to do to deliver our political ambition of 900 councillors. They do a bit more about the 5 MPs because it's a much smaller number and our target constituencies are more than 5. But one of the conversations that we've had in Eastern is around, okay, if we're going to get 30 by the end of the decade, that means every region and Wales have to come up with, say, 3 MPs. So we've got a target that we're looking for at the moment. Where are the other 2 areas that we want to start working and developing now so that we're building up clusters of councillors? There's a green presence. Greens are seen being active, making a difference. and it's therefore going to start to really increase the number of people that are likely to vote for us. And at the moment, we don't have that real dialogue between what happens in the central office to the regions, to the local parties and back. And it's about getting that pipeline working. You know, the structure's kind of there, but the pipe isn't working.
So one of the other roles of GPEx is that it acts essentially as the kind of employer of the Green Party staff team.
Yep.
Now, the Green Party staff team has grown massively over the last few years and changed a lot. But what I wanted to ask you was, how do you think that GPEx can better support the staff team?
Okay, I think there's a lot that we can do to better support the staff team. Excuse me. One of them, GPEx, can be much clearer about its priorities, and it can agree and set those priorities. You know, despite the staff team having increased, we still give it too many things to try and do. So we've got a very small resource spread over an awful lot of things. And it's about making some courageous decisions about actually what are we going to focus on and what are we not going to focus on, and giving that clarity of goal setting or outcome that we're looking for to the staff team. I think the second thing that we can do linked to that is we can really pay attention to where GPEx's role is to steer and hold accountable, and where we actually need to put energy in. Because sometimes we see GPEx members getting too involved in situations where we have staff working, and we see a lack of clarity about what the outcome we're expecting from the staff in those areas. So I think one of the early steps is to sit down with the Chief Executive, Mary, and say, okay, these are the outcomes that GPEx wants to see over the next 12 months. Show us how you're going to deliver on those and what the priority is, and give us your plan to achieve that. And we are going to hold you accountable for the outcome. We're not going to argue about how you go about it, because that's what we're paying you to do. But we are going to challenge you if we don't think you're achieving the outcome, or that we're drifting away from that target. So it's about prioritization. It's about clarity of outcome that we're looking for. And it's about giving the staff the space in which they can be professionals while holding them to account for delivering on those targets.
So I've got a couple more sort of serious questions before I move on to one flippant one to finish on. So the first of those serious questions is, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing the Green Party at the moment?
Crikey. Well, I think the biggest challenge at the moment, my belief, is, well, it's belief. I still hear too many people in the party saying we can't win under first past the post. That's just not true. We can. We do it all the time. They're called councillors. Councillors are elected on first past the post. We have shown in Brighton that we can get an MP elected, and we can do it in other places. And we've got to start believing that the longer we believe we can't win under first past the post, the longer we will not win under first past the post. We've got to start getting that belief. We've got to start working as if we have, you know, if people have got to believe it and work with that goal in mind. I'm not kidding that, you know, I've got no illusions about how difficult it's going to be, but unless we actually believe in doing it, we are not going to. You know, there's a famous quote, I think it's by Henry Ford, and it goes something along the lines of, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, chances you're right. And we have to believe we can, because if we start having that belief that we can, we will. We know we can win under the first past the post. We're killing it on councillors. We have to accelerate that, and we have to show that we can win under first past the post for MPs. And I think we can. I believe we can.
So one of the issues that has been recurring within the party over the last few years has been questions around discrimination and diversity within the party.
Yep.
And for a little bit of context here, you know, at the moment we have a concurrent with the GPEx elections, there's an election for the deputy leadership of the party.
Yep.
And there are 4 candidates in that election, all of whom are men from London. We also have, you know, if you look up and down the party, from the kind of elected representatives, the councillors that you've been talking about, through to kind of local party committees, regional committees, people involved kind of in the upper echelons of the party centrally, overwhelmingly, though, the people who are in positions like that are white. And we also have, you know, over the last few years, against the backdrop of, you know, the right-wing press and increasingly the Tories whipping up a kind of anti-trans moral panic, the scourge of transphobia has infected parts of the Green Party as well. As chair of GPEx, what would you do practically to address the issues of discrimination and diversity that we have in the party?
Okay, so the diversity is a really important question. And of course, the Diversity Matters report has just come back, and there are some clear recommendations to set out in there. I think one of the early things we need to do is to come alongside Greens of Colour and understand how white allyship can really, really leverage Greens of Colour. Too often, I think we look at discrimination, and we look at the underrepresentation of people of colour in the party, and we kind of turn to Greens of Colour and say, okay, so what should we do? And we kind of give them the problem. Well, the point is they're underrepresented, and there's not very many of them. So that capacity that is just not there in terms of helping us address that. So I think one of the things we have to do is actually start getting people mobilized, white people getting mobilized alongside Greens of Colour to really understand the issues and to work with Greens of Colour to try and actually fix the racial disparities that there are in the party, and that comes both at a membership level but significantly at candidate level. So I have actually seen some data around our representation at candidate level. I don't think it's, you know, we didn't get responses from everybody, but it is representative. So one of the great things is that the percentage of people who indicated that they have some disability is quite high, and we are close to some of the national averages on that, which is good news. On racial, it's miles off, which is not good news. So I think I've already started, and I've had some conversations, and they've not always been easy, mostly because of my ignorance. With the E&D committee and with the conveners of the E&D committee, and also with the chair of Greens of Colour, to actually understand what do we need to do differently. And I think we, you know, Kafensi made a really important point, which is you can't address, you know, underrepresentation of people of colour by business as usual. You have to proactively do something about it. And I think that's the bottom line, that we have to proactively do something about all of these tensions. And that means going and looking at target wards where there is a high propensity, a high proportion of people of colour, and actually saying, how do we get people of colour to A, campaign, and B, stand as candidates? You know, I know in one highly diverse ward in the UK, because a friend of mine is there, that all the candidates were white, and that is just not what the representation of that particular community is. And we've got to do something about that. And that means talking to Greens of Colour. It means proactively targeting and engaging with people to understand how we get more people of colour involved in the party, and how we get more of them standing. That means understanding their experience, understanding why they leave, understanding why they step out of you know, roles on GPRC or GPEx. So it's about talking to people and addressing the things that they are saying are causing the problem. And if we can start to do that, we can start to shift that representation. And I think especially in inner city areas, or where, you know, any area where there's a high level of people of colour, we have to go and proactively seek out wards and consciously put in place strategies to increase representation. It won't happen by chance.
So before I move on, you've spoken very eloquently there about the issues of kind of racial diversity in the candidates and the party more broadly. But I guess the one bit of the question that I guess you didn't really touch upon was the issues around transphobia in the party. And I just wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of talk about what how you would tackle that issue if you're elected as chair.
Okay, I think for me, we come down to two key issues, I think. And one is about how do we make all women safe in the party. I am very comfortable with our policy of trans men and men and trans women and women, and non-binary gender is valid and exists. And it's really important that we can actually take that policy and we can then work together to find a way that everybody feels safe and can work under that policy. And for me, the behavior of some people is a way that is taking away that safety, and we actually have to do something about that. You know, one of the questions I was really thinking about is, you know, what do I say if somebody says, you know, how would you define a woman? And I'm really, really struck by a piece of a survey that went out many years ago. And the survey basically asked women, what would you do if men didn't exist for the day? And the two most common answers is I'd walk on my own at night and I'd wear what I liked. And I think we actually have to focus externally about toxic masculinity. I think we have to look at what does it take to create a society where women feel safe. And we have to, that's all women, and we have to make that real inside the party as well. And honestly, that's going to involve talking to people and starting to really explore that understanding, explore where the fear is coming from, and actually start to come together to understand that actually our problem is the externalities and the toxic masculinity, and actually we can work together to address those issues in society and through the health service and through wherever we see it, so that actually people feel safe, and that has to be where we start.
So my final question for you is the flippant one.
Okay.
So who in the Green Party inspires you the most?
Oh, wow. I hadn't really thought about that. Do you know, there are just so many people. One of my local members, he's been in the party for ages. He just absolutely pours his heart and soul into it. He goes out and he campaigns everywhere else for lots and lots of other wards when we don't have elections on. You know, he's just astonishing, the energy and the effort and the durability he brings to that, and he's a continual inspiration for me. And I think there are just hundreds of people, well, not quite as committed as he is, but I think there are people in every local party who get up day after day and put in that really hard graft to keep their local parties going and to generate that energy and enthusiasm. I know how hard it is. You know, you've got to send out the emails, you've got to organize the meetings, and if you lose those one or two key people in the local parties, they very, very quickly wither and die. So it's my colleague locally. He's just astonishing, and it's people like him, you know, all across the party who make the local parties work, who keep that frontline, you know, energy going and mobilize people to get out on the streets, shove leaflets through the letterboxes, and get Greens elected.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today, Adrian. Where can people find out more about your campaign?
Well, I do have a Facebook page. You know, you've got to ask me what it is. I think it's Adrian Spurrell, Standing for a Green Future. But if you look on Facebook, you'll find that there, and there's some notes about what I'm doing and some of the things about what I stand for and get cross about. Obviously, there's the statement that you can get through Green Spaces as part of the standard campaigning. So those are the places I would direct people to go.
Yeah, thank you so much. Now, before I let everyone leave, just have a few things to let you know. The first of which, you know what I'm going to say, is scroll down right now and hit that subscribe button. If you found this interview interesting, engaging, useful in informing how you vote, if you're a member of the Green Party, then hit that subscribe button and you won't miss any of the other interviews with all of the other candidates. We've been talking for about 30 minutes. I'm sure you've heard plenty of things that you agree with. I'm sure you may have heard some things that you disagree with. Let us know and keep the conversation going in the comments down below. Bright Green, you may be surprised to learn, doesn't have the backing and the support of billionaires and big business. As an independent media outlet, we rely solely on the donations and the donations and contributions, is very hot today, of generous and kind people just like you. So if you are able to, please do head to bright-green.org/donate. And finally, if you want to hear more about the GPEx elections and the deputy leadership election, head to our website, bright-green.org, and you can find news, comment pieces, analysis on both those contests and our ongoing coverage of the UK's Green parties, the Labour movement, and the wider left. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very, very soon.